Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
That's £3.6 billion thrown away because he won't make them pay their taxes here. How many extra doctors could Britain afford with that money?
So, where the wealthiest are domiciled for tax purposes, dominating the UK political discourse. Now, that was Keir Starmer back in 2022. He was reprimanding Rishi Sunak for failing to crack down on non-doms. Fast forward to 2024, the roles are reversed, and taking his own advice doesn't seem so simple. Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm James Woolcock. Welcome to the programme.
It's about 2 weeks away from the budget, James. I have to say that things seem really quite tense when it comes to Downing Street. We're reporting on the growing sense of unease among cabinet members over Rachel Reeves's potential spending cuts. There's also this debate about whether a possible hike to employer national insurance would constitute a breach of the manifesto. James, you and I were going back and forth about this. We had to pull up the actual manifesto line and read it back to ourselves.
Well, and look, Caroline, it says Labour will not increase taxes on working people, comma, which is why we will not increase national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. Now, I have to say, Caroline, we had that quote, and I think we're still divided on this issue about whether increasing national insurance contributions for employers would be breaking that commitment or not. The IFS's Paul Johnson says it would. Labour advisers actually were asked about this in the election campaign and they refused to rule it out then. So I think it's all to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. The sticking points around the budget debate really are about wealth creation and growth versus how you plug that fiscal hole of £22 billion that Rachel Reeves has talked about, but that could even be as high as £40 billion. Will increasing capital gains taxes and adjusting contributions for those non-DOMs actually raise enough capital or push wealth creators to go abroad? Can the government get the balance right?
The reality is, at this point, only the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and a very close group of aides know what is going to be in the budget at this stage. We know that on Monday, they got their first look at the forecast from the OBR after their measures were taken into account.
Right.
They still have 2 more rounds to calibrate that and change that. And this is not your first budget, Caroline Hepker, if I dare say. You know just as well as I do that when we get into these kind of 2 weeks before the budget, you start to see in the press every interest group, lobby group, and upset cabinet minister with their budget being cut start briefing to the press. And so what we will start seeing now is balloons going up across Westminster as people try to argue that their demographic, their spending power, their budget is more important than anything else.
Yes, but look, put aside, the taxes on beer or what's going to happen with VAT or any of those issues. I want to focus on the area that is, I think, of most interest to Bloomberg, and that is, the wealthiest people in the UK, the people who have a lot of money to invest or are creating large businesses and are successful, and their view, because there is this growing debate around non-DOMs. There is even a lobby group that is actually getting some face time, one that was created in the wake of this storm around tax policy, that is getting some face time with Keir Starmer's aides today. And so on this point, I want to bring in Nimesh Shah, who's the chief executive of Blick, Rothenberg, which is an accountancy firm that specialises in advising wealthy clients, many of them non-DOMs. The first sort of opening question is, what do you think the main concerns are for your clients? I mean, is it the non-DOMs issue in the autumn budget, or is it taxes more broadly, or is it something completely different?
I think it's a cocktail of lots of different things here. I think I could trace this back to Brexit back in 2016, and then the climate has changed on taxes. Our politics has been a bit of yo-yo politics. Tax has been a political hot potato as well. And then it was very clear that we were going to have a majority Labour government probably 12, 18 months ago. And the positioning from the Labour Party in opposition was that taxes need to rise. We have these flagship programmes around non-DOMs, VAT on private school fees, private equity and carried interest. The wealth demographic in the UK felt that the writing was on the wall, given where the political positioning had been. And then, since the general election, over the summer, we've had really 2, maybe 3 messages from Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer saying there's a 22 billion black hole and the broader shoulders will pick up the burden. And that has set lots of hairs running. Combining what I said at the sort of the history that we've had in the run up to this event, that people feel that wealthy individuals feel that Britain is maybe not the most attractive place now to base themselves, set up businesses. The investment climate is also very difficult. And we should be very, very mindful that the world is now a smaller place. Other jurisdictions have popped up with very attractive and competitive tax regimes, investment regimes, incentives. And so the UK has lost some of its shine. And I'd say I'd go back to Brexit really as to whether we are definitely open for business and are a world player in this space. We were 10, 15 years ago. We were the envy of the Western world with our non-dom and corporate regime. And I think we've done a pretty good job at tarnishing that reputation.
Yeah. Briefly, Nimesh, because you drew this all the way back to Brexit, is this the straw that broke the camel's back, or are Rachel Reeves's plans kind of the big dynamite? Is this kind of a final push over the cliff, or are these new changes everything? I'm trying to figure out, what are you advising your clients on the back of? Is it that they're just exhausted, or you are very, very scared about what's coming in this budget?
Look, they're exhausted. Everyone likes certainty in the system, and businesses like to plan ahead. So when you have constant changes in tax regimes and investment outlook, and again, messaging from the government, which my own personal view is I think they've just got this widely off the mark. The businesses and our clients are saying, well, we don't mind necessarily that tax changes do need to happen. Policy needs to move on. We need a modern, fit-for-purpose regime. But the approach that the previous government took on non-doms in particular, that it was a big surprise, there was no consultation. It was clearly political positioning from Jeremy Hunt and the Conservatives back then. They needed extra money to pay for their national insurance cut. They also wanted to steal a march on Labour's flagship policy as well. And you'd expect for big reforms like this, it's the biggest reform of our non-dom regime, which has basically been around since for over 200 years, and it's not really changed that much. And to have a big reform like that and done overnight, I think that's what people feel quite aggrieved about, that you normally have a very considered consultation process with stakeholders.
Yeah, okay. So, and the non-dom regime, just to be clear, is UK residents whose permanent home, therefore their domicile for tax purposes, is outside of the UK. So they only pay tax on their income within the UK. So if they've got big investments, somewhere else, they get basically to enjoy lower tax rates. In terms of what you actually think is going to emerge from government, as you say, lots of controversy. There have been lots of claims about what is going to be in the budget, but we don't know what's going to be in the budget. What do you think might actually come in terms of, do you think it's really going to be that the entire status, as you say, is simply going to be scrapped? That's hard to believe.
That's what we've been told so far. So this is probably the area of the budget that we know the most about. So the last budget from Jeremy Hunt said we are abolishing the non-dom regime. We're replacing it now with a very shortened tax holiday, 4 years, and we're going to have some changes on the taxation of trusts, which lots of non-doms have. And also there's this inheritance tax reform for non-doms as well. In July, the Labour government now came out and said we are committed to doing that with some refinements, because we felt that the previous government left some so-called loopholes in there. And the positioning for me right now is that we're planning to say that this is happening in largely the form that it's already been announced, because we've had 2 separate announcements from 2 different governments in the space of 6 months saying that this is happening. There might be some refinement, but what we have seen, and you mentioned at the start of the programme, was that there have been some lobbying groups saying this is going to be damaging for the UK. There has been some alternative research that's been produced more recently, which is suggesting that there'll be £1 billion shortfall in the revenue that the government think they're going to raise from abolishing the non-dom system. So, and as you said, there's potential that the lobbying group is meeting with some of the advisors to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves in advance of the budget as well, to present that research, present maybe alternative options there. But for me, it feels quite late in the day. And is there time? Now, I think the government could give it some time. I've never felt that this needed to be rushed through. This is a big reform. We have an opportunity with a very majority government. It's a slightly centre, maybe slightly left of centre government. We have a stable economic system. Inflation's down, interest rates coming down, the pound has strengthened. So all the indicators are really good. If I was sat across from Rachel Reeves right now, I'd be saying, actually, let's pause for a year. Let's do a proper consultation and let's come up with a world-class regime which ties in tax, immigration, and investment.
But come on, consultation simply means an opportunity to water down. I mean, I can't have been the only one. James, you flagged this to me. The Times writer, Giles Corran, just read the column that he wrote, absolutely sort of flaying non-DOMs for leaving the UK in very strong terms, that their commitment to the UK sort of wasn't there, or anyway, making lots of points that maybe those individuals weren't prioritising the community and the priorities of Britain enough in all of this, that, as the saying goes, people should pay their fair share, etc. I mean, there is a concern about that, surely, that I've got to put to you.
Yeah, I can see where Giles is coming from. That are these individuals just only in it for saving some tax in the UK? And look, that's a blatant, obvious argument around the regime, and is it strictly fair? We shouldn't, though, forget that the non-dom population does contribute a significant amount of tax revenue. They are taxed on their UK sources. Many of the non-doms that I know in my world, they're entrepreneurs, they're business owners, they've set up businesses here, they've invested huge amounts into the UK. And because of that, as I said, because of the way that this has been done, without proper consultation, without proper economic impact as well, I think the bit that's been missing for me is you've talked about tax revenues and that we might raise 3 billion. The OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, said that number is highly uncertain. But no one has done an economic impact analysis of, well, what happens if a non-dom leaves the UK, stops investing or reduces investment in the UK? What does that mean for employment, VAT receipts, etc.?
I went and chatted to our chief UK economist, Dan Hansen, about what to ask you. And he said the difficulty is it's almost impossible to quantify. And as Caroline's kind of pointed out there, with the best intentions, non-doms don't quite make the heart bleed in the same way pensioners do when we talk about their sort of burden on the state, say. So can you put some numbers on this? How much tax do your clients pay at the moment, i.e. their effective rate and not their headline rate? And then how many have already left? How much is the UK missing out on?
I suppose, again, my view on life is maybe slightly skewed. I act for the wealthier population of non-doms, and their effective rates of tax will be as high as top-rate taxpayers in the UK. I haven't got the numbers to hand, but there is some analysis out there from HMRC which suggests how much non-doms are paying as a proportion of total tax revenues in the UK, and it is a significant number. Your second question around, well, are people leaving? My experience is not lots have left, because it does take time for people to leave. You need to set up home somewhere else. Maybe there's immigration considerations, schooling for children, and so on. So this is a longer term sort of process that you have to go through. It's not as much of a cliff edge. Some have left because non-doms, by their very nature, are internationally mobile individuals. They may have businesses and homes outside of the UK in multiple countries. So it's easier for some more than others. But what I am finding is that every non-dom, and actually every entrepreneur as well, I act for a number of entrepreneurs within Blick Rothenberg, and entrepreneurs are also worried, who are not necessarily non-doms, but they're worried about the direction of capital gains taxes. And having built up wealth in a business over many, many years, if the CGT rate at one point was rumoured to go and over double, I think that's been now tempered down by Keir Starmer in recent days, but that was also a serious concern. And so there was a direction which was set by the government, which was that taxes are going to go up for those higher value, wealthier entrepreneurs. And people felt that they needed to do something about it because the cost just became too high. And I think, again, I put a wrap around all of this, that the general business environment, tax is an element of that. it feels not as favourable as it did 10 years ago.
You know, I wonder whether there's a change of tone also coming from HMRC. For example, James Murray, MP, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, is now chair of the board at HMRC, which obviously advises on HMRC's performance and delivery and strategy and their capabilities. I suppose what would be... Do you think that things are going to be watered down in the budget? I think that is the bottom line. With all of these warnings and this anxiety, we know that the fiscal position is immensely difficult, but do you think it's actually going to end up being a damp squib? Do you think that Rachel Reeves is going to be under pressure from so many different quarters that actually the budget is not going to be as transformational as people might think for a first budget for a new government, you know, out of power for 15 years, you know, with a 5-year mandate? Is it going to be a bit more of a damp squib?
I hope it will be, because you want stability in your tax system. The rumours over the last couple of months have just not been helpful, and a number of international businesses that we work with have been sat on their hands, who want to come invest in the UK, and said, well, we can't really it'd be reckless of us to go and do that when your government is uncommitted on what the tax regime and the business regime is going to look like. We need to go and wait. And if it is as bad as they've suggested in their tone, then the UK is not a place that we want to go and do business in. Now, I would be saying that there's no rush. Actually, you say they've got a 5-year mandate. Given the majority they've got, they should be in for at least 10 years if they get this right, or even remotely right. So I would be taking our time, assessing where the public finances really are. It's been 100 days. How can you have a full assessment on where the opportunities are, where the challenges are? And also, tax revenues are at record highs. We shouldn't lose sight of that. So 22 billion black hole, that is tiny in the total UK tax take of over 800 billion now. And the OBR is saying that by the end of this parliament, probably even sooner, annual tax receipts will be $1 trillion. The thing that everyone's not been talking about, which actually hits every single person in the UK, forget whether you're a non-dom or a wealthy entrepreneur, but actually this is working people, using Keir Starmer's phraseology, is frozen allowances. Frozen allowances are bringing in huge amounts of revenue for the government. At the OBR's last forecast, it's 20 billion a year. That is huge. That's more than the total of non-doms, school fees, private equity combined. And that's hitting all these people. And so if you want to do something for working people, you need to unlock that side of the tax system, which is a horrible way to raise taxes.
Nimesh Shah, Chief Executive of Blick, Rothenberg. Thank you for going on and shedding some light on what is going on inside the heads of some of Britain's wealthiest people.
Well, that's it from us for today. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Tiwa Adebayo and our audio engineer was Sean Guastamakia. I'm James Woolcock.
And I'm Caroline Hepker. We'll be back with more tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg UK Politics. Listen weekdays at noon on DAB Digital Radio in London.